got the same hunter from yesterday. I was like helping out with some quests, and I think he wanted to like finish off some Zia or something like that. Sounds good. Huh. That like completely covered my name for like a second. I don't have the thing to summon Godzilla though.
Blood and thunder. Strength.
Bro's already got his Hearthstone at Gassison, so he's waiting on me to fly there. What's Sarth gotta fucking say today?
Today we're going to take a look at the differences between Alliance and Horde in Season of Discovery. Yesterday I made a tweet showcasing basically the difference in damage from Alliance to Horde, but that wasn't showing the whole picture at all, and we need to clarify a ton of things. Because there should be a difference between the factions, and one faction, while it does have a lot more damage potential for most players, the other faction has a ton more healing, making the raids a lot easier and potentially allowing you to bring one less healer and filling that spot with a DPS. And lastly, this is supposed to be an objective conversation talking about the differences between the factions, which it's a seasonal server. It's not a big deal, even if I or other people might get worked up about it. It only ever matters to the top 1%, but it could be an easy way to explain if you're seeing yourself do a lot less damage than someone else. So let's get into all of that right now. So Horde in OG Classic were actually stronger until about AQ, where King starts to outscale having Wind Fury.
You, like, more,
that is not the case anymore because everyone has Kings. Now there's a huge difference in Alliance. This is the TLDR at the beginning. Alliance have more healing because Paladin healers are insanely strong, but Horde on some classes are losing up to 450 DPS per class, and on other ones it's around 150 DPS, and we'll look at that. And I'm not really talking about the racials. Again, at the beginning, TLDR is going to be probably a boomkin angle. Let's look at Alliance versus Horde, and we're going to look at it from like a raw angle. And the big reason, the new reason, the first one, there's three major reasons. The first one for DPS is that Grace of Air Totem and also Strength of Earth Totem are giving you strength and agility, which both get buffed by Kings because everyone now has Kings with Heart of the Lion. So both of these get buffed by Kings versus improved Blessing of Might, which gives just melee attack power, which we'll get into again as well. So first of all, we're looking at Warrior. I don't even have the Warrior API absolutely perfect. This is the base one. I have the APIs for Hunter and Rogue set up, but we're just going to look at Warrior to give an example. So if we go Warrior, we go to, and I chose Tauren to be as unbiased as possible. But if we go to whatever, Night Elf, who cares? And you're not going to have that. You're just going to have Blessing of Might, Kings, and make sure everything is there. Perfect. In a 90-second fight, Warrior on Alliance without any changes is going to be 3,985 DPS. This is going to be a very good Warrior, by the way. Most Warriors won't pull off all of the damage. Now we're going to go to Tauren to be objective, where we are not looking at Orc racial. So Tauren, just by getting the agility, right? Tauren's just by getting the totems Okay, so 100 DPS there from getting the totems. Perfect. Racials, honestly, Blizzard warned everybody in SOD that racials would be a thing at the very beginning. So like complaining about racials is like a non-existent factor. Like thinking about that is like being a baby, right? Like that's another 50 DPS, but this is only running 3,000 simulations. It's more like 120 DPS for warriors being horde. And this gap will get bigger, right? Because if you have a percentage difference, like if horde is 5% better at phase 1 of level 60, once you get stronger and stronger, that 5% will still stay at 5%, but the number of damage will go up a large amount. Horn of Lordaeron was actually removed from the game, and that is a great point, Radiator. Horn of Lordaeron was removed from the game, I believe, which would actually fix that singular issue, the totem issue. Horn of Lordaeron coming back. There's 3 issues. We're 4 technically because of the healing thing, so we're going to talk about all of them, but the first one is totems. So Horn of Lordaeron would fix this because you can use Horn of Lordaeron and then kings would buff Horn of Lordaeron, but it was removed from the game, which wasn't really as much of an issue. I mean, I say that from my own personal bias because I was playing a hunter, and hunters scaled on melee attack power in an awkward way, and they thought they would be able to weave, but weaving is not a thing unless Blizzard fixed traps, which would be sick. But Horde of Lordaeron is not in the game anymore. It was removed. I'm not exactly sure the reasoning for it being removed. I think it was just being replaced with another rune that they thought was better, and I think it was a rune that was better. I'm not a paladin main, but the person who actually spurred me having this conversation and doing a lot of research into it was Holy Palace Sway, who's like literally the best paladin and maybe one of the best healers in the world. Absolutely. He brought this up. Okay, so first of all, let's just look. All right, just as a warrior, let's say from going Alliance to Horde, 150 DPS per warrior. We'll do a sheet. Let's be real. You're gonna go orc or troll. So what would the difference with troll be? Just to be, why would you be troll? I don't know. Some people would do it. And troll's better for like everything now. Troll, because of the racial changes, troll is actually the best. So all right, let's put low end 150, right? Warrior 150. Okay. All right. And I know there's sims like literally Atos has figured out that he can get on like a 30-second fight on warrior, like 8,000 DPS, which then it'll be a much different situation. Let's look at rogue. Okay, we're gonna go to mutilate rogue, talents, mutilate, rotation, mutilate. Let's look at mutilate rogue, and this is playing orc. We're gonna go to human, night elf. Night elf technically has more agility, so we're going to night elf, and we're gonna go improve blessing of might, might of stormwind, of course. Let's give you boggling root and the jujus I don't care about, and give you the sigil. Let's just say flat out like this first. Okay, so it's gonna be a similar situation going horde for rogue, right? We'll go troll would be sweet. Okay, that, no jujus, this resistance doesn't matter. All right, okay, 113, 114 DPS, right? But the big change for horde is that Storm Strike, which you can't see because of my face is covering it. Storm Strike, the 20% nature damage debuff, is pretty much up 100% of the time for horde, and it is gonna be very rare to see it.
I feel like there's like actually an amount, like a max cap of debuffs actually, and sometimes like I notice my Storm Strike debuff falls off, like even though like you use it every 6 seconds, like I'm looking at the boss debuffs, I'm like, where the fuck did that go? Like something is overwriting it, so it's like you can't have like unlimited debuffs on a boss. I'm very sure about that, but continue on.
It on Alliance. Now, right now, the world's #1 speedrun has a boomkin. That's going to be a very rare occurrence when things get really honed in, because boomkins aren't that great. Unfortunately, they need to be buffed for sure. Probably one of the weakest classes, and we'll look at like the classes. So most of the time playing Alliance, you don't have a boomkin, which means now you are losing. Let's go back to, sorry, human, no nature buff, might. Now as Alliance, you're losing about 300. Now this is where we're save. Sorry. Save this, now go horde, orc, everything, and get a buff, and perfect. All right, so now as an Alliance, rogue, 500 DPS for most people, right? 500 DPS for most rogues. Just from that, Ideally, eventually Boomkins get buffed, so it's not a huge thing. But because of how large this is and how good rogues are, you might have to then bring a Boomkin slot, which again is more preference to Horde, but just say it's not fun, it's 492 or whatever that was. All right. And Hunter, it'll be pretty much the same thing. Hunter Alliance, Hunter Horde, True Shot, similar thing, 500 DPS. Okay, again, this part mostly matters only to the top percent of players. If your guild has a Boomkin in it, then you are not seeing a difference in your DPS, only 100-ish DPS from not having totems, but it's not nearly as large as for rogues and hunters, very specifically because of the lack of Boomkin representation in a lot of raids. Again, only for the top percentage of players, so don't stress about this. It's not a big deal for most people, but I'm trying to keep you all informed. The difference, though, is Alliance have Paladins, which Paladin healer is literally -1 healer, at least right now. It's probably going to come down to it where both Alliance and Horde are running the same amount of healers, but Paladin heals is like one Paladin healer carries an entire raid. Paladin healer is so strong. So the difference that would come down to, would it be more DPS to drop a healer or to lose 500 DPS on every single target fight? Now, that's also thinking purely single target, because a run that matters is overall damage. The Horde gains half the mana as ally. I'm not completely forgetting that either, Peanut, which is only this phase. Last phase, Horde gained like 3 times the mana. But yes, Horde gain less mana than Alliance. Is that a buff in fighting bosses? No, because bosses die so fast. Literally, bosses die so fast. It doesn't do anything. You can chug green mana pots. It's not a buff for anyone in DPS wise. It's literally not a buff for anyone DPS wise. So you're losing. Let's even look at just this raid. You would be 2 hunters, which would be on single target, purely single target. If I go to like a single target boss, oh, this is crank. This is crank. Lose 500 DPS here. Oh, you guys can't see it. All right, 3,600 DPS. If you lose 500 DPS here, 400 DPS here for top end angle, 120, 300 DPS here, 120. This would probably be a feral druid. So with both of these guys, ferals are good right now, Julie. That is a fair point. Gain a little bit of damage instead of losing damage from these characters. 300 probably here, 350 here, 100 here. Is that all worth 1 extra healer? Cutting 1 healer? No. So if you want to parse, just go Horde. That's an easy answer. But if you want to have an easy raid, play Alliance. For most Alliance raids, you don't get Dream State. Now, there's the argument that like just bring a Boomkin, but then again, Boomkins are not very great, if we're being honest, and that is a major issue. Boomkins that's like sacrificing a spot or choosing player over class or bringing them for utility. But once things get changed, they'll get brought out. And feral druid or resto druids also will be phased out, especially on Alliance side. Great on Horde, but on Alliance side, obviously that's the one you drop because you have Paladin, who is like crazy. On Alliance side, just don't bring rogues. Can still do really well. You need just God RNG, but you're even with God RNG, you would just do a lot more on better Alliance, right? Either way, if you're playing Alliance and like you're struggling to get a 99 or a 95 or whatever, just know you probably are missing like 20% of your damage. Probably. You have to check it because debuffs are the biggest things in the game. Debuffs are like where all of your damage comes from, debuffs and buffs, and you're missing the biggest ones. If you're a hunter or rogue, if you're a normal melee class, you're probably missing like, I don't know, what, 5% of your damage. Like, get over it. But that 5% of damage throughout the whole raid adds up because then it's shorter fights, which adds up. And then 20% for the hunters and rogues, right? So it's like a huge loss for them. But on the flip side, you have more healing, which as a casual raid makes it easier, but there's not a lot of damage that goes out in the raid. Does this affect casters? Not really. No. What about camp T-buffs? Those are always a thing. Like every Alliance that's ever made an Alliance character should have known that they have to compete with camp T-buffs.
Camp Tarajo buffs? I mean, that's such a small thing, but I guess maybe a top 100 parser would go get those. Like, what he's talking about is like there's like you get blood shards in the Baron, yeah, and there's like a guy in a cage at Camp Trilogy. He can give you buffs and shit, but it's like they last for like 15 minutes. Like you need like a whole summoning team and shit to like summon you to the raid to like, and they're not boonable, so it's like, sure, I guess maybe that would be something for like a top 100 parser, maybe. What the hell, Camp T buffs? I haven't heard anyone mention those like since phase 1. Oh, there's another Sarth take. Yeah, I just gotta get some water. Cause probably will need it a bit later on, unless I just want to stand there and wait for fucking Shammy Rage. Did he ever do the tank ratings yet? I know he did a DPS ranking. No, he didn't.
The new Molten Core raid has now been cleared in the very first day in Season of Discovery, and today I'm going to break down all of the strategies you need to know for every single encounter to be able to clear it on heat level 3. And like we expected, the new boss at the very end of the raid does drop legendaries. It drops a ton of loot, but also it does drop legendaries. So you can see we got a binding from this very last boss, and let's just dive into everything you need to know. First things first, Blizzard did say that in heat level 2 and 3 you will need fire resistance gear, and the recommended fire resistance of 96 or higher or 226 or higher for heat level 3 is not actually a recommendation. And that's because, as you'll see in a second, if you take 1 tick of fire damage in one of these heat levels, right here you're seeing me, and I had slightly under the 226 cap, you will get the conflagration debuff, which will then hit you for up to 300,000. We've actually seen it overkill someone for now 1.5 million damage. It is a literal one-shot, so you need to be ready to have that fire resistance if you want to go into these raids. Now, the first boss is Lucifron, and he comes with his 3 adds, and you're actually going to kind of find this consistent throughout the raid. What you're going to want to do is tank the adds away from the boss himself, so have the adds being tanked off to the side, whereas the boss gets tanked off to another side. He needs to get moved a lot more here, and you'll see it happen in a second, but what the adds do is consistently mind control players around them. You can see this in the background. People are getting mind controlled, and this is a magic debuff that needs to just be dispelled. And if the tank is off by himself, you'll notice as Windforce is pulling the adds over here, he will pretty much be the only one getting mind controlled. So if you instantly dispel this consistently, so just assign 1 person to only dispel the tank that's tanking the adds, then you should be fine. There is also a decurse that has to happen, which is essentially a curse that goes out on all players, similar to what Lucifron usually does, and it makes you basically not able to cast, or all of your abilities cost more mana. That on top of the last thing, which is essentially a magic debuff he puts, you can see this right here, called Impending Doom, and that needs to be dispelled or it will hit you at the end of this tick for 2,000 damage. It will not kill you. Do not worry, this won't kill you. It's actually not really that scary. You probably aren't even going to end up dispelling it eventually. You're probably going to just end up leaving it on, but that's the simplicity of this fight. Realistically, it's just tank the boss in one side, tank the adds off on their own, and make sure you are dispelling and decursing. The second boss is Magmadar, and you only really need 1 tank for this fight. He does summon adds, but you really can use 1 tank. To make it easy, I would have 2 tanks. This boss does an AoE fear every now and then called Panic. When he does this, pretty much everyone gets feared, so if you have Fear Ward or anything else, it's easy to avoid, but just make sure you kind of deal with this and have Fear Ward on your tank. Now, Magmadar does summon these Core Hounds, like I mentioned, and they will add a stacking debuff to the tank that is tanking them. So for now, we have the main tank taking them, and he actually didn't really need to get them off of him. With enough damage, you can just burn the boss. So with world buffs, you'll end up just literally burning the boss. Look at its HP. And on top of that, the boss will throw out these flame patches on the ground, and if you are below the fire res suggestion, you will get that conflagrate I mentioned earlier and just die instantly. He'll also do a flame breath, which isn't too intimidating to be realistic. It's just losing aggro to the fear and watching out for these flame patches on the ground. Ignore the ads, burn the boss. Welcome to MC. That's a pretty consistent mechanic. And if you are a hunter, make sure you are using Trank Shot on cooldown whenever the boss gets enraged or frenzy. And you get Trank Shot from the boss before this, Luciferon, but you need to keep doing this. If there's only one hunter, you cannot use it right as the frenzy happens. It'll be like 4 or 5 seconds after it happens that it goes out. But from there, you should be able to easily take the boss down. Hannes is another really easy encounter, and I'm going to show you probably a really bad way of doing it, and then I'll show you a really good way of doing it. The boss will consistently cast a rain of fire around the room, and basically he'll cast it on the range. So the tank just needs to kite the boss in a circle around the room so that the range can use all of this room to not get locked in by this rain of fire. This is what I'm going to show you a really bad way of doing it, but again, you're going to know another consistency is have a tank tanking the ads off to the side, which do a stun on anyone near them, so watch out for that for the tank over there, as well as the boss will do a curse on anyone around him. He'll do a curse that will go out and it will reduce your healing by 100%, so instantly decurse the tanks. But realistically, you'll have one tank over here tanking the ads and one tank tanking the boss. Now, we are moving to the back of the room where he was spawned, which is not a great place to drag the boss, honestly. We have to bring him down before we run out of room. Don't do this. Instead, do something like this. Drag the boss slowly towards any of the corners, just around the room, and the ranged can just consistently move slightly. It's a lot easier to deal with things this way, and some people can actually just eat all of the damage if they have enough fire resistance, but realistically, just burn the boss and slightly drag him around the room. The rain of fires are annoying, but they don't do a ridiculous amount of damage. As you can see, the ticks on Zeroji, actually you can't see them behind me, they're happening for 1,000 normally, but he's usually resisting quite a bit of it, so he's not actually taking very much damage. You should be able to bring the boss down pretty quickly. Eventually, you won't even really have to move. You probably will have enough fire res and the boss will go down fast enough. Now, there's two main strategies for Gar, and this might actually be the hardest fight in the raid right now. This boss has 4 ads, and you can CC them for an amount of time until the boss reaches a certain amount of health, and then they become enraged and are no longer CCable. What you want to do is, as a easy way, the dad way, which is what you're probably going to want to do in Pugs, is actually just have the boss be tanked against a wall and then burn down all of the Firesworn ads slowly but surely. One by one, bring them down. As they get low, they explode. You'll see that they are going to get brought kind of inwards right here, which they shouldn't be. They should just be left out there. They will explode as they get low, and on top of that, once you bring them all down, then you can just burn the boss. But on top of that, there's another mechanic. You can see this little right there, that guy. All right, I was out of range of my fire resistance aura from my paladin because I got knocked and I got the slow on me. There's a slow, this debuff right here that makes you super slow. So I got knocked and got the slow, and I was not above the 226 fire resistance cap when I am far enough away from my paladin. That is my fault here, and so when I take fire damage, I'm instantly conflagged for 50,000 damage. Instant death for anyone that does this. But these magmakins, these little guys, will target a random player in the raid and charge at them and then explode. When they explode, it knocks everyone around you back and does fire damage. Again, just make sure you have enough fire resistance, and ideally in a future world, what we're gonna do is tank all of the ads pretty much on top of the boss and burn the boss. Slow and steady really wins the race on this fight. You're actually gonna see in this world first clear, this actually is Zeroji makes a pretty huge play. One of the off tanks, the off tank Snurk goes down, and then you're noticing that the main tank goes down also. Zeroji's gonna get aggro on 2 of these firestorms and kite them around. if this didn't go down cleanly, everyone would have died, and this would have been a wipe, and this boss took way too long. So 3 of the ads are chasing him, and then a target dummy happens right here, and then they just keep focusing, burning the boss, and it goes down. So I would highly suggest, for now, just separating the ads, CCing them, burning them down, and then going to the boss. Baron is an easy but kind of stressful encounter. There's a lot of moving parts. Now, what I would suggest is having a hunter pet pull the boss into the room you just defeated Gar, because it gives you enough room. And you'll notice that the bombs go out. Baron does a bomb on a player, and that player needs to run away from the rest of the raid, or else they will explode, wiping everyone. But now Baron gives 3 bombs, and you'll notice everyone running in random directions when they all should run in a semi-similar direction, and they will explode, leaving this actual pool of magma on the ground. The boss will also leave his own pool of magma on the ground, you can see up there, after he does his AoE ability, which is an AoE ability that's kind of on a timer. And what it does is pulsate fire damage, and each individual pulse does more and more damage. So the melee need to run away from the boss when he's doing this, because the last pulses in original WoW ticked for 5,000. So I anticipate there were a lot more here. I played ranged on this fight, but just know you can see all of the melee running away, and then he leaves that magma pool on the ground, and then the tank is just gonna kite him all around this room. Very, very simple. The main thing to worry is about people getting the debuff like I have right here, and I'm trying to run to Narnia, but there was respawns behind me, so I go into the other direction to Narnia, get knocked up into the air, make sure I don't pull anything. I have slow fall on, noob move, and then go back in and fight the boss. So everyone just needs to pretty much watch out for that actual explosion. If you get the debuff, that person did it too close to all of the range, and we got hit for 2,000 damage, but it doesn't actually wipe you instantly. That's like the big fear on this boss. Just keep kiting him around the room. You only need 1 tank, kite around the room, and the 3 people that get the bomb need to run out. There's going to be weak auras that just yell at you to run away, little girl. Shazra is another encounter where resistances can be helpful, but he does arcane damage. You can see this arcane explosion that he is doing around himself, and he also curses people with a curse that basically makes you take a ton more arcane damage, which means you'll almost get one shot or potentially get one shot by one of these arcane explosions. That's why I always suggest using a restorative potion. You can see this actual CD right here at 17 seconds. This is a restorative potion, because worrying about other people decursing you is really scary, to be honest, and this was just better on this fight in general. Back in the day, as melee, you could stay in on the boss and keep DPSing if you used the resto pot instead of a greater arcane protection potion. But the main mechanics of this boss are that he will teleport to a ranged camp. So you want 1, 2, or even 3 ranged camps, whatever your group prefers. It's actually pretty simple, but he will randomly teleport to someone in the raid. It actually doesn't even have to be ranged. He could teleport to one of the melees, and what he will do after this is leave an after image of himself in the original location he just was at, which will continue casting Arcane Explosion forever. So you can see he was teleported here, where he's now still casting Arcane Explosion, but there is an after image of him casting it as well. What you want to do, ideally, is kite him around the room, so you have as much room as humanly possible, going this way, then this way, so like back towards me, and then back and forth. What we did, which is ridiculousness, but it worked, and you can see him there teleport right to one of the melees right on top of him. What we did was just kind of use the entire room. It is an awful way to do this, in my brutal honest opinion, but it works. It's not really that intimidating. So as long as you have the room in the raid and enough DPS, which with world buffs you will, then you're gonna be fine. Make sure you get those decurses, and the boss also does put a magic deflect shield on himself. I was gonna say spell, but magic deflect shield, so whenever he does that, just make sure that gets dispelled. But on top of that, of course, have an off tank standing in one of the range camps. Again, look at us, we are there's a reflect magic, we are very spread out in a very awkward way, and we have used only 3 teleports to waste all of the inner sides of the room. It does not make sense to do it this way. Don't do it this way. And the core hounds in this raid respawn after 15 minutes. Very, very fast respawns. I anticipate this won't be a thing because they're not supposed to respawn after Magmadar, but either way, just use the room. We even got this ad to come in and still defeated the boss. It's pretty simple, but you have to utilize the room well. Golmag is a 2-2-4 tank fight. And that is because you can use 2 tanks to tank both of his ads off on the side, like we consistently love doing, because if they are close to the boss, they are kind of enraged. You can see that their snouts are like red here. If they're close, then they will just get mad and do a lot more damage. The boss will put a debuff up on the tank, a stacking debuff on the tank that reduces his armor. And at 4 stacks, you usually would want to switch the main tank of Golmag, but I think you can just bubble off the stacks as a paladin. I know you can bubble off the stacks as paladin. And as Ford, yeah, you can just do a tank swap, but you can just have the ads tanked off to the right or the left, wherever you want them, and then just burn the boss. You did also notice that this boss does summon like little meteors that come down, and you can actually don't watch the meteors falling from the sky, watch the circles on the ground. That's the only thing to really worry about, is dodge those circles on the ground so you don't get nuked. And you can see that debuff I was mentioning over here on all of the melee, because it's technically like a splash. It's called actually magma splash, and it hits everyone around him. That's why we have an off tank standing in the range camp. There's the meteors, just dodge those, and if the tank were to go down, the off tank would just pick him up and stand there. Again, you do need your fire resistance though on the tank, at least on this fight, because if you get hit with this magma splash, which is fire damage, and aren't at that fire res cap, you literally just get nuked and you get one shot. Each ad on Soulfront Harbinger should die at the same time, and there are 4 ads which each need to be tanked, but more importantly, they each need to be interrupted, because these are all priests. As well, the boss does do an AoE stun, so if he is tanked within the ads, like with the ads, people will get AoE stunned, which means use a free action potion. There's also a stacking debuff that you can see right here that reduces your attack power. Basically, the entire raid, they have their attack power reduced all the time. What we did is just stack everything up and use a ton of AoE. Look at the casts going out and they get interrupted here, except for one of them just went through, but just AoE everything down, meaning that hunters, feral druids, rogues, but not really, mages, and definitely warlocks with their Shadow Bolt cleave will do ridiculous amounts of damage on this fight. It is effective damage. Just make sure you are interrupting the entire time and bring everything down. If you need to, you can separate the ads from the boss, so take the boss over to the right and take the ads over here on the left behind this little follow notification, and then burn the ads first, then go fight the boss. But it's not really too intimidating in Season of Discovery anymore because of one major thing, and that is that everybody has cleave. So effective cleave is really huge here, which you can see the hunters doing really well, because we were the only ones that chose to change our runes for AoE damage. But you can see we have 3 stacks of this debuff, reducing our armor and attack power right there. Then just make sure the interrupts go out and burn the boss. Interestingly enough, Major Domo is a similar situation where cleave can work out pretty well, except for there are some threat drops that you need to watch out for. So what we did is have all of the ads be tanked, the healers need to be interrupted, and you want to take out the elites first. So the healers will go down second, but you can do decently well effective cleave, although you kind of want to focus on the elites. Now you see this bubble that happened on the ranged, everyone stay in that, because the damage that goes out from that explosion will be shared for everyone inside of it, and if you run away from it, everyone or the person that was targeted by it will die for sure. So you need to all stack up inside of that for effectively to soak it. Now the dark mendings, the heals get interrupted, and the elites are the things that go down. Cleave is again worth it here, I think, in my opinion, but realistically it's just like extra kind of not cheese damage. The ads don't heal up to full as you take them down. If they did, then it would be super useless cleave. But when you take down any of the ads and you just move on to the next one, which you'll see in a second, they also get randomly, the boss will teleport someone to the center of the room right there, and it'll happen to me soon. And when he does that, you just need to run back to the stack. and it'll also happen to the tank that's tanking the main boss, and he will drop aggro. The boss will drop threat a lot, and it just needs to be re-taunted or re-picked up and brought back into the stack. So it's scary to cleave here. You'll actually notice I get threat quite a bit. You see as people get teleported into that circle or into that middle, that's pretty much the big fear here. You actually do not need to defeat him at all. You don't end up defeating him to win the fight. So you just kill all of the ads, and then he will go into the middle, and you'll see someone that just wants to obviously run as fast as they can to check for the loot. Someone always does that in every raid, but just take out all of the ads and you'll be fine. On to Ragnaros. This fight is a little bit intimidating and probably the second hardest encounter in here right now, but the big thing on this fight is everyone wants to be 8 yards away from each other because the boss will do splash fire damage on people randomly and knock you back as well. He'll also drop threat on the tanks and do a knockback on melee, and when he does this threat drop, you'll need to run away as the melee. If not, your melee will just be turned around. The boss will literally just turn around and delete the melee. So have your tank and off tank fighting for threat, standing on top of each other, and then you see I got knocked back there, and everyone else will be able to kind of be spread around the entire room. I'll show you another POV in a second. If you're a hunter, it is awful to trap this fight, like god awful. You need to be super, super close. The only position we really got that worked was here or like somewhere over here so that you could trap the very, 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 very center of his hitbox. Hunters feel pretty terrible on this fight, but either way, as long as the melee keep moving out when they are called for and the tanks keep fighting for threat, you're going to be fine and people don't stack up. Here's another POV from Zeroji over here on Notice. You can see it from another perspective, but essentially people are spread out around the room, and then when the boss hits 50%, he will force submerge, which will spawn ads. Here we go. It's happening right here. He will submerge, spawning these ads. It's bugged, so you can still see the boss, but he should be underneath the water. Ignore that. Everyone stack up over here, drop frost traps, and tank the ads, have them be picked up, and then move all of your ranged or casters away from the ads as you AoE them down. Because they do an AoE mana burn, so if you're near them, you will lose all of your mana. And when the ads die, they suck everyone near them into their, like, little position that they died and drop a flame on the ground. You can see it happening right here. Yeah, happening right there. It just consistently happens as the ads go down. But if you take them out easily, stack them all up, frost trap, and nuke them with AoE, then you'll be golden. Then the boss comes back up from his submerge phase, and you might have to deal with another submerge, but it is not a forced submerge. 50% is a forced submerge, and if your DPS is low, you won't have to deal with another submerge. And just keep pumping the boss down. Again, make sure you have that fire res. It's super necessary, but just keep pumping the boss down. And the scariest thing is pretty much for the melee to just get whomped. It's always been the scariest thing on this fight. Just run out and run back in, or try to, this is what you used to do, stay at max melee range as melee, like a literal as far as you possibly can, and he should not turn around and one-shot you. He should stay on the off tank at that position, and then towards the end he will start spawning more Sons of Flame, and you'll notice them right here, and they will just move around. You can just CC them or have a tank pick them up like an off tank, and then you just burn the boss. But do not worry about those other Sons of Flame. They are not that intimidating. Just burn the boss and bring him down. GG, you have defeated what is originally the last boss in Molten Core. But we have one more, the secret extra boss, as we see the Hydraxian firefighters now surround the room. And you also notice Duke Hydraxis has spawned in the room. Now, summoning this final boss has been apparently bugged. Originally, what you need is the Exalted Hydraxian Waterlord's trinket or item that turns you into a water elemental yourself, allowing you to talk to Duke Hydraxis to start an RP event. But there's other triggers to allow you to get the RP event, and I'm not 100% sure what it is. I know that a Blizzard GM hopped into Joker's raid to help this go down, to help them be able to initiate this, so I think the bug of this will be fixed. Now, over time, this boss will gain mana. You're seeing him slowly gain mana, and on the first kills, this was potentially bugged, because once he reaches 1,000 mana, the boss will enrage, which is this giant spicy meatball called the actual literal molten core. And these Hydraxian firefighters are trying to keep it cooled down. They're trying to cool down the core, but fire elemental adds will spawn throughout the raid, and they will go and attack these firefighters, these water elementals. Your job is to protect the fire elementals or water elementals. That's literally your main job. Burn the boss while protecting the water elementals. The boss will also put 2 debuffs on random players, Heart of Ash and Heart of Cinders, and those players need to run to each other and group up so that it drops the debuff. But if you don't do that, you just get this consistent blast wave around your character, which for now at least you can take outside of the raid, even into Orgrimmar, and do something like this. There is also a kind of, you'll see it right here come down, a meteor that comes down. It's obvious, it's slow, dodge it or else you'll die. That should be an easy thing to dodge. It should theoretically be easy to dodge, but you also see a water elemental go down right over here. But now we realize we really need to keep these water ellies up because the boss is gaining energy faster. And as the boss eventually, when he reaches max energy, as we only have 1 water ellie up, and as the boss starts getting lower, he will start pulsating damage, like an earthquake damage. Beautiful trap. I love that trap. He will start pulsating damage with an earthquake ability, but as he gets enraged, as we'll go all the way towards the end, because this boss, realistically, the mechanics weren't too bad early on. There's just a lot of raid-wide damage from this pulsate, but when it reaches 100 energy or 1,000, it is supposed to enrage. So you'll need to pretty much stack up, use raid CDs and burn it. But the real way to defeat this molten core is going to be to protect those water elementals. I think when it is fixed, which the hotfix should potentially be in already, you will just need to hard focus on saving the firefighters instead of burning the boss down, which then also did end up dropping a binding. So you can get legendaries and extra loot from this boss. There is a ton of loot that drops in this raid, which is really, really nice. And the raid itself was really fun in my opinion. Although the mechanics of needing that fire res cap 226 for heat level 3 is not the best, in my opinion. You have to take off a lot of your DPS gear to hit the fire res cap, even in full bis. But what you'll end up doing is most likely just defeating the raid on heat level 2, because I don't think you get any extra loot for heat level 3. The only real changes are you get that final boss right here that you saw, Molten Core, and you get the cosmetic molten versions of weapons that has like a flame on it. They're not better, they just have a flame on it. So you get a little extra loot, but it might not be worth it for most guilds to clear it on heat level 3, at least for the first few weeks. But that is Molten Core, the new Molten Core. Kind of similar to Season of Mastery if you realize it, but I mean, who's saying that? Who knows? And if you like this guide or want any more coverage of Season of Discovery Phase 4 or beyond, of course, make sure to subscribe to the channel, and I will have some class guides coming soon, especially Hunter class guides, because in that run, I was, of course, rank 1 DPS in the whole world. It didn't matter. Most people weren't booned. I unbooned a couple fights and I AoE'd a lot, and this has already been beaten, but whatever. It was a fun time and I enjoyed the race, but I think most people should just do it on heat level 2 and have that 96 fire res, because it's a lot easier to hit that than hitting 226 fire res.
Ready. I can't cast it. Still
In this tale, we are going to focus on an area of Azeroth that boasts some of the finest lore ever written in World of Warcraft. We are travelling to the northern reaches of the Eastern Kingdoms to uncover the history of the Plague Lands, covering the entire lore of the zone, including the stories of Stratholme, Scholomance, the Knights of the Silver Hand, and the battle for Light's Hope Chapel. The Plague Lands were once a thriving and beautiful region of Azeroth. The lively city of Stratholme lay to the north, while the surrounding areas were filled with small towns, villages, and a close-knit community that farmed the land to sustain the Grand Kingdom of Lordaeron. Known previously as Eastweald, this lush area provided its inhabitants with either the peace and harmony that a simple farming life offered, or for those seeking a faster paced lifestyle, there was always the hustle and bustle of the grand city of Stratholme. However, as we know today, this idyllic image of this area is a far cry from its current harsh reality. In this tale, we will uncover the true history of Stratholme and these appropriately named Plagued Lands. Situated at the very heart of the once great kingdom of Lordaeron, Eastweald occupied the land between the Tirisfal Glades to the west, the hinterlands to the south, and the forested area to the north known as Colosseum. However, this human-dominated region of Azeroth appeared vastly different in the past. The origins of these plagued lands trace back thousands of years to the beginnings of the human tribes. Nearly 2,800 years before the events of the Dark Portal, the High Elves of Quathalos found themselves locked in perpetual conflict with the native and dominating Amani trolls. These moss-skinned trolls, known for their ability to regenerate limbs and heal injuries, were a savage and malevolent race. With their empire sprawling across the vast majority of northern Lordaeron, the trolls fiercely defended their borders against any perceived threats. Meanwhile, the scattered human tribes of Lordaeron waged internal battles for supremacy over their respective lands. Amidst the chaos, the Arathi tribe recognized the growing menace posed by the trolls and sought to unify the disparate human tribes against their common enemy. Through 6 years of cunning strategy and military prowess, the Arathi gradually subjugated rival tribes, including the human tribes from the Alterac Mountains and from the Tirisfal Glades, offering peace and equality to the conquered in exchange for their loyalty. The humans of Tirisfal, led by the great warrior Lordain, were more refined than the savage mountain tribes. Deeply religious, they performed rituals at shrines and revered Tyr's silver hand, often wearing its image as pendants. Unlike the Alteraci, they resisted force and required the leader of the Arathor nation, Thoradin, to appeal to their beliefs to gain their loyalty. Thoradin made a pilgrimage to Tirisfal's sacred sites and pledged to adopt and spread their religious practices. He sealed this promise by cutting his palm and mixing his blood with the earth, declaring, "Between our people, let this be the only blood we spill." The Tirisfal humans then joined him, with Lordain becoming one of his generals. Lordain's sister, Merelda, was among the first followers of the Holy Light, which the Arathi adopted and eventually leading to the Church of the Holy Light years later. The culmination of the Arathi's efforts was the establishment of Strom, a mighty fortress city in southern Lordaeron and the capital of the newly formed Arathor nation. Rumours of the elves' plight reached Strom, prompting Thoradin to realise the true extent of the troll threat. Desperate for aid, elven ambassadors arrived, seeking military assistance against the troll armies. The king accepted, and the war against the trolls began. During the final days of the Troll Wars, as King Thoradin and his forces retreated to Alterac Fortress, the Amani rapidly gained ground, threatening to flank and overwhelm Arathor's armies. To prevent disaster, General Lordain volunteered to hold back the forest trolls, knowing he would not survive. Lordain and his warriors died fighting, but their sacrifice secured victory for Arathor and Quathalos. After the Troll Wars, many of Arathor's soldiers migrated back to the fertile lands of Tirisfal, where they established a central stronghold and renamed the region Lordaeron in Lordain's honour. Similar to what we see in the southern expanse of the Eastern Kingdoms, where the Kingdom of Stormwind thrives on the hard work of those farming the lands, Elwyn Forest, Westfall, and at that time Brightwood, and beyond, Eastweald served as the equivalent for the Kingdom of Lordaeron, the city being built on the hard work of the surrounding community, who farmed the fertile soils to feed the expanding population. As the population grew, humans began to spread their influence into the surrounding lands. In this region, several towns and villages emerged from old fortresses that were built during the war with the Trolls. Some of these include Anderhull, Hearthglen and Caer Darrow in the western side of East Weald, and then Darrowshire, Corin's Crossing and Tyr's Hand on the eastern side. At this moment in time, the population of the area was governed by the newly established city of Stratholme, which had quickly become the second largest city in Lordaeron in the years that followed the Troll Wars. The people of East Weald not only looked to the Kingdom of Lordaeron and the governing city of Stratholme for leadership, but also devoted themselves to the new emerging religion, the worship of the Holy Light. The Holy Light can be briefly described as an endless, shimmering sea of energy situated outside the barriers of reality. It is one of the two most fundamental forces in the universe, along with the Void. The people of East Weald built Light's Hope Chapel in the easternmost reaches of the region, using it as their main place of worship. This makes Light's Hope Chapel one of the oldest and most revered holy sites for the humans. Since the days of the Troll Wars, the humans of Lordaeron had not faced such a formidable force again. However, true to their nature, they constructed fortresses to ensure that they were prepared for any future invasions. One of these fortresses was Caer Darrow. Located on a small island in the middle of East Weald, on the surface it appeared to be a typical human stronghold meant to protect the kingdom's people. But this was far from the truth. It secretly housed an ancient High Elven runestone. A few thousand years prior, shortly after Quel'Thalos was founded, many High Elves became concerned that their use of arcane magic might once again attract the Burning Legion to Azeroth as it had during the War of the Ancients. To address this, Dath Ramar Sunstrider tasked his most powerful arcanists with finding a solution. They devised a plan to create a protective barrier called Ban Denorial, known in our tongue, the Gatekeeper, around their land. This barrier would conceal their magic from others, deter their superstitious Amani rivals, and diminish the magic of all non-elves within its bounds. Over several decades, the Arcanists constructed a series of monolithic runestones along the borders of Quel'Thalos to define the barrier's limits. These runestones were powered by the Sunwell and linked to the mother tree Thassalar, combining the tree's natural magic with the elves' arcane spells. One of these runestones was located on the island of Caer Darrow. This leads us smoothly into our next chapter, which delves into the lore of this area during the Second War. Fast forwarding through time, the humans of Lordaeron lived peacefully for thousands of years, farming the land, devoting themselves to the Holy Light, and supporting the kingdom. However, everything changed drastically in the year Zero. Medivh, the corrupted guardian of the realm, joined forces with an otherworldly warlock named Gul'dan. Together, they opened the Dark Portal in the Black Morass, located in the southern reaches of the continent. This event would alter the history of Azeroth forever. The Orcish horde from the planet Draenor poured through the Dark Portal, decimating human settlements in the south and sparking the First War. The humans of the Kingdom of Stormwind battled the Orcish horde for years before being overrun, ultimately losing their grand city. Anduin Lothar, known as the Lion of Stormwind and a knight champion during the First War, made a desperate bid to save his people. He led the remaining population north by sea from Stormwind Harbour, seeking refuge in the lands of Lordaeron. In the 4th year after the Orcish horde's arrival, Lothar and the people of Stormwind reached Lordaeron. Meanwhile, in the south, empowered by their victory over the humans of Stormwind, the Horde prepared for their next phase of the invasion, aiming to conquer the entire continent. Their next targets were the lands of Khaz-Modan and then Lordaeron. This phase, known in the history books as the Second War, saw the Horde surging northward, establishing a grand base of operations at Blackrock Mountain. The Horde launched two major assaults. The southern offensive swept through the dwarven lands of Khaz-Modan, conquering most of the region except for the dwarven capital of Ironforge and the gnomish capital of Gnomeregan. The northern offensive advanced from the Grey Sea, just as Anduin Lothar had travelled. Once they landed, the Horde achieved significant success initially, using enslaved red dragons and nearly capturing the capital city of Lordaeron after receiving help from a band of treacherous humans. However, the tide of the war began to turn in the favour of the Alliance due to several factors, one of which was the founding of the Knights of the Order of the Silver Hand. The Alliance was made up of various nations, some of which were rivals with differing customs and ways of life. Lothar needed something to unite them, champions who could rally all humans regardless of their origin. The answer came from the Church of the Holy Light. Archbishop Alonsus Fowl met with Lothar. Fowl proposed creating a new order that embodied the best qualities of humanity: soldiers proficient in wielding the light, skilled in traditional warfare, and exemplifying loyalty, bravery, and honour. With Lothar's consent, and from within Alonsus Chapel, inside the city walls of Stratholme, Fowl and Uther recruited noble knights and priests from Lordaeron to train in the ways of the light and martial combat. The first recruits included Tyrellian, a priest instrumental in forging the alliance at the Council of Seven Nations; Saidan Dathrahan, a man of immense physical strength; Tyrion Fordring, a knight renowned for his zeal and resilience; Uther, an accomplished knight and devout believer who had apprenticed under Fowl; and Gavinrad the Dire, a battle-hardened knight from Stormwind and comrade of Lothar who had fought in the First War. The Orcs advanced and reached Eastweald. The island of Kayadaro was invaded by the Horde, the fortress was sacked, and the sacred runestone was captured. The stone was then split into pieces and would be later used to create the Altars of Storms, arcane structures that allowed Gul'dan to imbue the Horde's ogre allies with magic. When Uther embarked on a mission of mercy to aid and comfort the survivors of the raid on Kayadaro, he was ambushed by privateers from Alterac. In the ensuing naval battle, some of the Alterac soldiers were captured. Under questioning in Lordaeron's capital, they confessed to their nation's treachery against the Alliance and admitted that their kingdom had assisted the Horde in their passage through the mountains. As a result, some paladins joined the Alliance troops led by the High Elf Milan to rescue captured civilians and attack Alterac City, aiming to stop Horde reinforcements from reaching the capital city of Lordaeron. Without these reinforcements and Alterac's support, the Horde struggled, leading to an Alliance victory and the Horde's full retreat back to Khazmodan. The Knights of the Silver Hand played a crucial role in pushing back the Horde, liberating Khazmodan and ultimately forcing the Horde back to the Dark Portal itself. Tyrellian led the Alliance's charge against the Orcs' final stronghold in what became the fiercest and bloodiest battle of the Second War. The Azerothian side of the Dark Portal was destroyed, partly due to the bravery and skill of Uther and the Order of the Silver Hand. Afterward, Tyrellian and other paladins rallied the Alliance forces. Facing the Knights' formation, many Orcs panicked. Some fought to the death, others surrendered, and some fled. Thanks to the Knights, the Alliance achieved victory. While the Alliance secured a decisive victory over the Orcish Horde, the threat was not entirely eliminated. As mentioned, some of the Orcs scattered across the land, with many being captured by the Alliance. The Alliance of Lordaeron took decisive measures to contain the Orcish threat, constructing several large internment camps in southern Lordaeron. These camps were guarded by both seasoned soldiers and paladins of the Silver Hand, such as Captain Scarlock at Durnhold Keep. Despite the tense atmosphere among the captive Orcs, the camp wardens maintained peace and enforced order effectively. As years passed and tensions eased, a lasting peace settled over Lordaeron. With his paladins, the Supreme Commander Uther preserved peace in the kingdom. Meanwhile, his apprentice and the son of the King of Lordaeron, Arthas Menethil, was integrated into the ranks of the Silver Hand through a ceremony at the Cathedral of Light conducted by Archbishop Alonsus Fowl himself. During this period, Tyrion Fordring, Lord of Mardenhold, was overseeing and governing the town of Hearthglen, situated in the northern region of Eastweald. Here, Tyrion encountered an aging Orc warrior residing in the ruins of an abandoned watchtower near Hearthglen. Initially enemies, they engaged in combat that caused the tower to collapse. Eitrig, the Orc, ultimately saved the unconscious Tyrion's life by pulling him from the rubble. This act forged a sense of honour, and Tyrion felt like he owed the Orc his life. However, this bond did not prevent Eitrig from later being captured. facing execution in Stratholme. Eitrigg was spared thanks to Tyrion's timely intervention. For his actions against Alliance soldiers, Tyrion was brought to Stratholme to stand trial before a jury, despite being offered freedom in exchange for breaking his vow to the Silver Hand. Tyrion refused. Consequently, Uther had no choice but to excommunicate Tyrion from Lordaeron, forcing him into exile and a life of wandering and seclusion as an outcast. For a decade following these events, Eastweald remained relatively tranquil. The Kingdom of Lordaeron focused on rebuilding its strength and commemorating its triumph over the Horde, striving for a peaceful existence. Unbeknownst to them though, masterminds of the Burning Legion were plotting global domination once again. Following their defeat in the Second War, the Old Horde's war chief, Ner'zhul, was captured by Kil'jaeden as punishment for his failure. The Deceiver destroyed Ner'zhul's body and tortured his spirit until he agreed to serve the Legion once more. Ner'zhul's soul was then encased in an armour and bound to the frozen throne by Kil'jaeden, who hurled this creation towards Azeroth. It crashed into the Ice-Crown Glacier and essentially giving rise to the Lich King, pivotal figure later in the Third War. Upon arriving on Azeroth, the Lich King seized control of Northrend and began scheming with the necromancer Kel'Thuzad to conquer Azeroth. During this very period, a young orc named Thrall managed to escape from his captivity in Durnhold Keep and began freeing and uniting the Horde under a new banner. A handful of powerful individuals around the world heard the Lich King's mental summons from Northrend, the most notable of them being Kel'Thuzad. He was the first to answer the call. The Lich King was pleased with his latest recruit, promising Kel'Thuzad immortality and great power in exchange for his loyalty and obedience. Disguised, Kel'Thuzad returned to Lordaeron and set up the floating dread citadel of Naxxramas. We'll come back to Naxxramas later on in the story. Over 3 years, he used his wealth and intellect to gather a secretive brotherhood of like-minded men and women, which he then later named the Cult of the Damned. The cult promised its acolytes social equality and eternal life in exchange for their service to Ner'zhul. Kel'Thuzad ensured the cult's activities remained hidden from Lordaeron's authorities. On Kayadaro, Kel'Thuzad struck a deal with the Barov family, allowing some of his cultists to move into the newly formed school of necromancy that was located here. The school would go on to be known to us adventurers as Scholomance. He also persuaded his friend, Baron Rivendare, to join the cult. With Kel'Thuzad's success in Lordaeron, the Lich King made final preparations for his assault on human civilization. Placing plague energies into portable artifacts called plague cauldrons, Ner'zhul ordered Kel'Thuzad to transport these cauldrons to Lordaeron. The cauldrons were hidden within various cult-controlled villages and served as plague generators, spreading a plague across the farmlands and cities of northern Lordaeron. The Lich King's plan worked perfectly, and many of Lordaeron's northern villages were contaminated almost immediately. Prior to the Third War, Anderhall served as the distribution centre for all agricultural supplies in the northern provinces of Lordaeron. In the 17th year after the events of the Dark Portal, Kel'Thuzad and the Cult of the Damned used it, alongside the small town of Brill in Tirisfal Glades, to spread the plague of undeath by infecting the grain, which was then sent to various northern villages along the King's Road, including Hearthglen and Stratholme. As a result, Anderhall was one of the first places hit by the plague, though it remained free from direct scourge control years later. The people of Eastweald, most still unaware of this insidious plague, consumed the infected grain, unknowingly sealing their tragic fates. The Alliance forces observed a grim metamorphosis taking place in Eastweald as the plague began to ravage the land. Once vibrant and teeming with life, the region now languished as vegetation withered, farms turned desolate, and animals succumbed to the disease. This agonizing transformation marked the beginning of the end for the once prosperous and lush Eastweald. When Prince Arthas Menethil and Jaina Proudmoore arrived in Anderhall to investigate, they found burning buildings but no sign of villagers. Kel'Thuzad suddenly appeared, revealing his identity and his intentions. Determined to stop him, Arthas searched the city for the empty granaries and then pursued the necromancer as he escaped. Heading north and eventually found Kel'Thuzad, the necromancer informed Arthas that he was a servant of a greater power, a dreadlord named Mal'Ganis. Enraged, Arthas vowed to kill Mal'Ganis and slayed the corrupted wizard Kel'Thuzad on the spot.
Naive fool. My death will make little difference in the long run. For now, the scourging of this land begins.
While stationed in Hearthglen, Arthas and Jaina's forces came under attack by hordes of undead. Arthas instructed Jaina to locate Uther while he and his troops defended the town from the scourge, the people of Lordaeron, who had already been infected. It was during this battle that Arthas uncovered the horrifying truth about the plague. Those afflicted didn't just perish, they rose again as undead minions of the scourge. Before being overwhelmed, Uther and his knights arrived in the nick of time, rescuing Hearthglen from destruction. Shortly thereafter, Arthas encountered Medivh, who urged him to journey west to Kalimdor. Despite Jaina's belief in the prophet's warning, Arthas remained steadfast in his conviction to stand by his people and refused to abandon Lordaeron. Together, they pressed on towards Stratholme to confront the looming threat of the Scourge.
Lead them across the sea to the west.
Flee? My place is here, and my only course is to defend my people.
The demon Mal'Ganis specifically targeted Stratholme for its strategic and economic significance as Eastworld's heart, and as a revered site for the birthplace of the Silver Hand Paladin Order. Losing Stratholme to the plague meant losing control of Eastworld itself. As the first undead began to stir in Stratholme, Prince Arthas, accompanied by Uther and Jaina Proudmoore and their soldiers, arrived in Stratholme to find the city already gripped by the plague's horrors. Arthas, driven by grim determination, concluded that purging Stratholme was the only way to prevent it from becoming a bastion of the Scourge.
This entire city must be purged.
What?
He commanded his companions to put down the infected before they could transform into mindless undead. For Arthas, this was a desperate act of mercy and a brutal necessity. Yet, his allies, Jaina, Uther, and their loyal paladins refused to partake in Arthas' merciless purge, viewing his actions as sheer madness.
Have you lost your mind, Arthas?
Undeterred by their objections, Arthas and a handful of resolute soldiers pressed on with their grim task. Flames soon engulfed the city. Ash and smoke filled the streets, and cries of anguish mingled with the clash of steel and the shattering of bones. Blood flowed freely across the cobblestones as Arthas and his men ruthlessly cut down both the plague and the undead alike. In the midst of the inferno, Arthas confronted Mal'Ganis, who mocked and goaded him to follow to Northrend before slipping away. With grim resolve, Arthas rallied his forces, who were now going by the name of Death Lords, and departed as the fires consumed what remained of Stratholme's once bustling streets. Days later, upon their return, Jaina and Uther were greeted by a haunting scene. Streets littered with lifeless bodies and the charred remnants of what was once a proud city, now reduced to ashes.
So much death. I can't believe Arthas could have done this.
In the southern town of Southshore, Alexandros Mograine, a knight of the Silver Hand, gathered his fellow knights, Isilian, Abendis, Doan and Fairbanks at the local inn. They convened to discuss an artifact in Mograine's possession and its potential use in halting the Scourge's advance across Lordaeron. Their meeting, however, was interrupted by Lord Commander Saidan Dathrahan, who brought the news of the culling of Stratholme. He also informed them that Arthas' contentious actions led to the suspension of the Silver Hand. Faced with this dire situation, the Assembly had no choice but to continue their mission in secrecy. Mograine then travelled to Ironforge with his artifact, where it underwent a transformation into a weapon designed to avenge the death of King Magni's brother, Muradin Bronzebeard, during his time in Northrend. Upon completing the forging process, Magni acclaimed the weapon as the pinnacle of his craftsmanship. During their stay in Ironforge, the knights received grim news. Arthas had pursued Mal'Ganis to Northrend and returned to Lordaeron as one of the Lich King's Death Knights. This treacherous act culminated in Arthas murdering his own father, King Menethil II, which then ultimately led to the fall of Lordaeron's capital.
Succeeding you, father.
this kingdom shall fall. And from the ashes shall arise a new order that will shake the very foundations of the world.
Driven by fury over the prospect of losing his children, Mograine and Fairbanks rode tirelessly, day and night, to reach his home in Eastweald. Upon arrival, they discovered that Reno and Darien Mograine were sheltered under the protection of Talon Fordring at Hearthclan. When the Scourge assaulted them, Alexandros wielded his new sword and absolutely obliterated the undead with such force that only clouds of ash remained in their wake. The mighty weapon came to be known as the Ashbringer. Upon his return, Arthas embarked on a brutal campaign across the lands of Lordaeron, including the town of Andahul. Despite the dire circumstances, Andahul remained one of the few places under Alliance control in the region. It served as a stronghold where Uther and the surviving paladins gathered to mount counterattacks against the Scourge. Arthas and his minions launched a relentless assault on the town, seeking a magical urn at its heart for necromantic purposes. In an epic confrontation, the Supreme Commander Uther stood against Arthas and initially gained the upper hand. The revered paladin held his ground against Arthas and achieved what no one else had. He bested the Death Knight in combat, sending the unholy warrior sprawling. However, in a twist of fate, Frostmourne returned to Arthas' grasp, imbuing him with an even greater power from the Lich King. The tide of the battle shifted in Arthas' favour, and eventually Uther, bloodied and wounded, knelt and uttered his last words to Arthas. Arthas coldly replied that he intended to live forever, and delivered a fatal blow.
Save my soul.
When Frostmourne struck him, it shattered Uther's soul, with one fragment consumed by the blade and another taken by the Kyrian to the realm of Bastion in the Shadowlands.
Uther.
Where am I?
Welcome to Bastion.
Shifting our focus back to the mortal realm, the Scourging of Lordaeron was nearing its completion. The resistance against the Scourge was particularly brutal in Darrowshire. There, the Ghoul, August the Ravager, and the Death Knight, Marduk Blackpool, known as Marduk the Black, marshalled the Scourge against the town, slaying all who sought refuge within their homes. To the east of Darrowshire, Lord Maxwell Tyrosus and a select few were assigned the covert mission of retrieving the bodies of 1,000 fallen champions of the light and transporting them to Light's Hope Chapel. Here they were reburied in the consecrated ground, safeguarding them from being resurrected as tools of the Lich King's undead forces. With Stratholme in flames and the settlements of Andahul, Kayadaru, Darrowshire, Corin's Crossing, all overrun by the Scourge, the plague continued to spread. By this point it was concluded that both Eastweald and Lordaeron had fallen. Any human survivors couldn't bear to even utter the name Eastweald. Over time they began referring to the land as the Plague Lands, distinguishing the regions, the Western and the Eastern Plague Lands. Following the fall of Lordaeron, Alexandros Mograine rallied remnants of the Knights of the Silver Hand into a crusade, aiming to reclaim the Shattered Kingdom from both the Scourge and the renegade undead forces now known as the Forsaken. In the Eastern Plague Lands, they seized control of Tyr's Hand and Hearthclan, where their leader Mograine began plotting ways to strike back at the Scourge. During one of their excursions, Alexandros Mograine was accompanied by his companions and his two children, Reno and Darien Mograine, who by this point were now members of the Crusade. Together, they entered the burning ruins of Stratholme. Despite warnings from Abendis about the city's dangers, Alexandros confirmed the peril with his own eyes. As they advanced, a collapsing building separated the group, forcing them to fight their way through the undead to reunite. Darien was injured by a skeletal mage, and Seydan Dathrahan was slain by the Dreadlord, Balnazar. Balnazar would then possess Seydan's body with the intention of infiltrating the Paladin Order. Eventually, Alexandros found an escape route for all of them. Weeks later, Alexandros, accompanied by Lord Maxwell Tyrosus, Bridget Abendis, and his advisor Fairbanks, spied on the splintered group of the undead called the Forsaken as they took possession of the ruins of Lordaeron, noting that the Forsaken were unlike the Scourge and possessed free will. Alexandros recognized their superior organization and declared the need for reinforcements from Tyr's hand to amass an army capable of reclaiming the ruins of the capital city of Lordaeron. To prepare for this future conflict, Alexandros led his party to the old monastery in Tirisfal Glades, establishing it as a forward base. From there, the remaining members of the Knights of the Silver Hand gradually transformed into a fanatical religious sect dedicated to eradicating the undead from Lordaeron. This ideology spread beyond the monastery's walls, leading to the formation of the Scarlet Crusade. You can learn more about the formation and the lore behind the Scarlet Crusade and the Scarlet Monastery in our dedicated tale. A safe portal can be found in the description below. Not all survivors agreed with the Scarlet Crusade's ideology. Some believed their comrades had strayed from their once noble purpose and chose to leave the Order. Lord Maxwell Tyrosus spearheaded this separation and went on to form the Argent Dawn. Although they shared the same goals of protecting Azeroth from threats like the Burning Legion and the Scourge, the Argent Dawn adopted a less fanatical, more balanced approach. They established control over areas such as Chillwind Camp, the Bulwark, and their capital, Light's Hope Chapel. We have now set the scene for when we adventurers arrived in the Plaguelands in the 25th year following the events of the Dark Portal. 3 different factions all vying for control over the land: the Scarlet Crusade, the Argent Dawn, and of course, the Undead. Following the defeat of the Burning Legion in the Third War and the consolidation of the Western Plaguelands by the Scourge, Anderhall became a regional stronghold for the Scourge. Anderhall served as the headquarters for the Lich, Araj the Summoner, who used the ruined city as his base of operations. From there, he oversaw the deployment of the mighty plague cauldrons situated throughout the Western Plaguelands. When many adventurers arrived in the Western Plaguelands after somehow surviving the dangers of the Stranglethorn Vale, they were met by the Argent Dawn at Chillwind Camp. They were tasked with uncovering the truth about Anderhall. Their missions included eliminating Scourge and Forsaken forces, clearing the area of skeletons, and slaying key figures such as the Liches and the Valkyr. Additionally, the adventurers were asked to pay their respects to Uther the Lightbringer at his tomb, just south of Anderhall, and to scout out Hearthglen to report back on the strength of the emerging Scarlet Crusade. It was here that a rumour was confirmed. Talon Fordring, the son of the revered paladin and knight of the Silver Hand, Tyrion Fordring, had become a high-ranking member of the Scarlet Crusade. To save his son from the Scarlet Crusade, Tyrion enlisted the adventurers' help. He asked them to meet with Miranda the Hag at Uther's tomb, where they would be disguised to infiltrate Hearthglen and deliver Tyrion's gift by the Scarlet Crusaders. Upon receiving the box and its contents, Talon Fordring agreed to leave the Scarlet Crusade and reunite with his father outside the town. However, this betrayal to the cause enraged Grand Crusader Dathrahan, who had been previously possessed by the Demon Lord Balnazar. Dathrahan sent Grand Inquisitor Ysilion to kill the Fordrings. After defeating the assassins, Tyrion rushed to Hearthglen, where he witnessed Ysilion killing Talon. Fueled by his son's death, Tyrion avenged him and vowed over his son's body to reform the original Order of the Silver Hand as its High Lord, once more dedicated to extinguishing the evil that plagued the world. The adventurers were then sent on a quest into the more devastated section of the Plaguelands, the Eastern Plaguelands. Here, they were tasked with uncovering the truth of the area, reliving the events of the Battle of Darrowshire, and defending their land against the Scarlet Crusade in Tyr's hand. However, these quests were minor compared to the challenges they would face in the area later on. By this time, the ruined city of Stratholme had become the largest stronghold held by the Scourge in all of Lordaeron. Leading the undead forces in the city was a former noble turned Death Knight named Baron Rivendare, who coordinated the Lich King's efforts in the Plaguelands. In life, Baron Rivendare was a wealthy landowner in Stratholme and a friend of Kel'Thuzad, who had previously convinced him to join the Cult of the Damned. From within the walls of Stratholme, Rivendare constantly battled the forces of the Scarlet Crusade and the Argent Dawn. However, one small area in Stratholme still remained under the control of the living, the Scarlet Bastion, from where the Grand Crusader Seydan Dathrahan himself led the crusade against the Scourge. The Crusaders' fanaticism led them to believe that anyone who was not a member of their order was corrupted by the undead and had to be destroyed. As a result, the Argent Dawn sent adventurers in to kill the Grand Crusader, and to their surprise, they discovered that the Grand Crusader had actually been dead for years, and was being impersonated by the Dreadlord Balnazar. After slaying Baron Rivendare in a brutal encounter, the adventurers eventually overcame the demon Balnazar as well. This was not the last violence the walls of Stratholme would see. Remnants of the Scarlet Crusade still remained inside, tasked with dealing with the Scourge on their own. Eventually, the Master of the Scourge in Lordaeron, Kel'Thuzad, returned to the Blighted Land. From his citadel of Naxxramas, hovering ominously over the Plague Woods near Stratholme, Kel'Thuzad prepared to continue his dark work in the name of his master, the Lich King. Naxxramas, the dread citadel, stood as an unassailable fortress, cementing Kel'Thuzad's reign. However, hope glimmered with the Argent Dawn. Darian Mograine, driven by the legacy of his father, Alexandros, the former wielder of the Ashbringer, dared to infiltrate the floating fortress. Though he ultimately failed and lost his life, Darian succeeded in freeing his father from undeath, granting Alexandros' spirit eternal rest. This left Naxxramas significantly weakened, as Alexandros had been one of the 4 horsemen, the Citadel's elite commanders. Seizing this opportunity, and with the assistance of the most elite adventurers, the Argent Dawn launched an all-out assault on Naxxramas. They managed to defeat Kel'Thuzad, though he escaped his death. Shortly thereafter, the Dark Fortress mysteriously vanished from the Plaguelands, leaving the region in an uneasy peace. Sometime after the disappearance of Naxxramas, in the 26th year following the events of the Dark Portal, the invasion of Outland begins. The war's primary objective is to prevent the Legion from establishing a stronghold in Outland, which they could use to launch further attacks on Azeroth through the Dark Portal. During this time, a nobleman from the Plaguelands named Maddox decided to reclaim the fallen town of Vanderhall. Driven by selfish and egotistical motives, Maddox believed he could succeed where others had failed. Using his father's wealth, he assembled a mercenary army and somehow convinced the Argent Dawn to assist him. Unbeknownst to them, the Scourge army lay in wait, hiding in buildings and in the water. Soon, the entire Argent Dawn force from Chillwind Camp was decimated, with only a few mercenaries surviving. This failed attempt to retake Anderhall showed the Scourge was a formidable force, making light work of the 100 men who dared to challenge them. A few years later, in the 27th year after the opening of the Dark Portal, the Lich King, formerly known as Prince Arthas, had reached the pinnacle of his power, and the war against him began. Across Azeroth, several organisations were established to bring the end to the Lich King's threat, once and for all. Foremost among these was a group called the Argent Crusade, formed following the war's first significant conflict, the Battle for Light's Hope Chapel. The Lich King commanded the creation of a new Scourge necropolis, Acheras the Ebon Hold. It was designed with a single purpose in mind, to train and deploy Death Knights across Azeroth in his bid for domination. Acheras was so formidable that even the dread citadel of Naxxramas wouldn't have been able to withstand a direct assault from it. It was deployed and positioned in the Eastern Plaguelands, east of Tyr's Hand, in an area known as the Scarlet Enclave, and from here it served as a training ground for Death Knights with their singular mission to annihilate the Lich King's opposition, the Scarlet Crusade and the Argent Dawn, the remaining bastions of light in the Plaguelands. The halls of Acheras were filled with the bodies of fallen heroes, gathered by the Scourge to be resurrected as Death Knights. Under the supervision of the feared instructor, Resuvius, Scourge necromancers raised these bodies, assessing their worthiness. Those deemed worthy donned the armour of the Herald of Arthas, while those found lacking were fed to ravenous ghouls. Once their training was complete, the Death Knights launched their campaign. They ravaged the towns of Havenshire and New Avalon, slaughtering their inhabitants and obliterating the last army of the Scarlet Crusade. Those who managed to survive the massacre somehow went on to form a new group called the Scarlet Onslaught, setting their sights on Northrend to continue their divine mission. Some remnants of the Scarlet Crusade remained in Tyr's hand after the massacres, but they were no longer of mortal flesh. They had been transformed into undead warriors. These undead Scarlet Crusaders were led by Lord Valdelmar and Linnea Bendis, daughter of High General Bridget Bendis. Bridget had survived the attacks on Tyr's hand and assumed a new role as the High General and commander of the newly formed Scarlet Onslaught, which had relocated to Northrend and established New Hearthglen in Dragonblight. When atop Acheros, the Lich King was accompanied by two Valkyr battle maidens and then later by Prince Keleseth and Prince Valenar. Having shattered the defences of New Avalon and Havenshire in the Scarlet Enclave, the Lich King turned his gaze toward the final bastion of resistance in the Plaguelands, Light's Hope Chapel. This sacred ground where the Argent Dawn made its stand was the last hope of the light against the encroaching darkness. Bolstering his forces with reinforcements from Hearthglen and Tirisfal, the Lich King dispatched his elite Death Knights to spearhead the assault. Their mission was to bring out the venerable Tyrion Fordring, a legendary champion of the light, and crush him to shatter the resolve of Azeroth's defenders. A colossal army of 10,000 Scourge troops, commanded by the fearsome Death Knights such as High Lord Darion Mograine, wielder of the cursed corrupted Ashbringer, and including figures like Orbaz Bloodbane, Koltira Deathweaver, and Thessarion, assembled before the chapel. They faced a valiant but vastly outnumbered force of only 300 defenders, a courageous remnant of the Argent Dawn's leadership standing resolute within the chapel's walls. The battle raged fiercely, and the Scourge made swift progress, breaking through a third of the Argent Dawn's defences before Tyrion Fordring stepped forth to confront High Lord Mograine. With the power of the light, Tyrion fought valiantly, repelling the undead onslaught and forcing Mograine to withdraw. The confrontation turned dire when Alexandros Mograine, the legendary Ashbringer, made a dramatic appearance. Darion was momentarily transported to a past memory where he had once envisioned himself wielding the Ashbringer alongside his father. Their reunion was tragically cut short when the Lich King himself manifested, banishing Alexandros to the void and revealing the attack on Light's Hope Chapel had been a mere ploy to ensnare Tyrion. Fueled by rage at this betrayal, Darion unleashed his fury upon the Lich King, but was swiftly subdued. The Lich King, seizing the opportunity, attempted to consume Tyrion's soul with Frostmourne as Lord Maxwell Tyrosis rallied the defenders for a final desperate charge. Their efforts, however, were met with overwhelming force as the Lich King's power cast them aside. In a moment of unexpected hope, Darion, struggling against the Lich King's control, managed to deliver the corrupted Ashbringer to Tyrion Fordring. With the light's might coursing through the blade, Tyrion purified the weapon in a blinding burst of holy energy. Armed with the restored Ashbringer, Tyrion advanced on the Lich King, who, recognizing the peril of facing such a force on sacred ground, retreated and vowed that their next encounter would not occur within the confines of holy territory. As the battle subsided, Tyrion revived Darion, and the fallen hero's spirits were honoured. The paladins of the Argent Dawn and the remnants of the Order of the Silver Hand found renewed purpose in the formation of the Argent Crusade. United under High Lord Fordring's banner, they pledged to marshal their combined strength to bring the Lich King to justice. Amidst the conflict, many Death Knights had broken free from the Lich King's grasp. Darion Mograine gathered these freed souls and bestowed upon them a new name, the Knights of the Ebon Blade. Thus, a new chapter began, marked by the union of the Argent Crusade's righteous fury and the Ebon Blade's newfound resolve to confront the darkness that threatened Azeroth. After the world's focus shifted to Northrend, the war against the Lich King continued until his defeat at the Frozen Throne towards the end of the 27th year. Following the Lich King's fall, a sub-faction of the Argent Crusade became more prominent in the Eastern Plaguelands. Led by Eligor Dawnbringer and Corfax, the Brotherhood of the Light operated with fewer moral restraints, devoid of guilt and what they considered useless human emotions. Despite trying to balance the newly formed Argent Crusade's scholarly approach with the Scarlet Crusade's merciless tactics, the Brotherhood of Light remained steadfast in their shared ultimate goal, ridding the land of Lordaeron of any remaining scourge. The Brotherhood initiated their campaign against the remaining Scourge and Risen forces in Lordaeron with an assault force of 100 men, aiming to reclaim the cities of Stratholme and Tyr's Hand for the Argent Crusade. Aided by adventurers, they successfully captured Tyr's hand and eliminated the undead Scarlet leadership, including the undead Lord Valdelmar himself. The victory marked the end of the Scarlet Crusade's control over Tyr's hand as the Brotherhood took over, but Stratholme would prove to be a different challenge. After adventurers had overcome the Dreadlord Balnazar some years earlier, Balnazar shed his human guise and slaughtered all the Crusaders in the western portion of Stratholme, raising them into the undeath called the Risen. In the eastern part of the city, Baron Rivendare was resurrected and travelled to Naxxramas to join the dreaded Four Horsemen. His position as ruler over Stratholme was taken over by his son, the fallen paladin Aureus Rivendare. The Brotherhood of the Light offered rewards to the adventurers to help eliminate these threats. After slaying both leaders, the Argent Crusade attacked the remaining undead and briefly took control of the ruined city of Stratholme, establishing Alonzus Chapel and the Scarlet Bastion as their bases. However, the undead continued to haunt its streets, making their control only temporary. During this period, Azeroth faced the return of Deathwing the Destroyer. While the world rallied to repel the forces of the corrupted Black Dragon, the Argent Crusade and the Plaguelands continued their tireless quest to restore the region to its former glory. The Argent Crusade also joined forces with the Cenarian Circle to help the Plaguelands heal from its blighted state. Following the shattering of Azeroth, both the Alliance and the Forsaken launched major efforts to expel the Scourge from Andorhal. The city became a war zone. The Alliance held the southwestern side of the city, reinforced by Chillwind Camp, while the Forsaken secured the northeastern side. Haraj the Summoner led the remnants of the Lich King's forces in Andorhal, their power greatly diminished by their lord's previous death. The conflict culminated in the Battle for Andorhal. The combined forces relentlessly slaughtered the Scourge and ultimately slew the Lich, Haraj the Summoner. Sylvanas Windrunner intervened, using Valkyr to turn the tide and force the Alliance to flee the city. Just outside of Andorhal, across Lake Darrowmere, our story returns to Caer Darrow, more commonly known as Scholomance. After the death of the Lich King, the Scourge was significantly weakened. With no strong leadership in Scholomance, Dark Master Gandling, a human necromancer from the Cult of the Damned, used his ability to control the undead and begin to unofficially take command of the Scourge forces within the keep. He used them to maintain control of Scholomance and attempted to seize Andorhal for himself. When Gandling's efforts to take Andorhal failed, he retreated back into Scholomance to bide his time. The defeat of the battle for Andorhal left Dark Master Gandling in a foul. Determined to strengthen his defences, he began reanimating Ravelgor, imbuing the undead Guardian with an insatiable desire to harvest raw materials from his enemies. In the 30th year after the events at the Dark Portal, Lillian Voss turned her wrath on the Scourge Necromancers of Scholomance. She confronted Gandling in the Chamber of the Summoning, where he was supported by a group of Bone Weavers. A group of adventurers arrived to aid Lillian Voss, and together they defeated the undead forces. Gandling, however, managed to teleport further into Scholomance, escaping death. Lillian pursued him, but fell under his control, and he forced her to fight the adventurers instead. They managed to defeat Lillian and free her from his control, after which Lillian gathered her strength and attacked Gandling, breaking his enhanced bone shield, and with his protection shattered, Gandling retreated to his study. The adventurers then allied with the spirit of Lord Barov, who believed Gandling's defeat would finally allow his spirit to rest. Together, they launched an assault on the Dark Master and claimed victory over Scholomance. During the Burning Legion's invasion, the new Lich King Bolvar Fordragon ordered the Death Lord to rebuild the Four Horsemen and chose Tyrion Fordring as their leader. Initially, Darion Mograine opposed this, believing Tyrion deserved more than a life of torment and undeath, recognizing him as one of Azeroth's greatest champions. Ultimately, the Knights of the Ebon Blade had no choice but to comply with the Lich King, leading to the assault on Lightshope Chapel to try and recover Tyrion's body. Inside the Hall of Champions, where Tyrion's body rested, they confronted Lady Liadrin. Despite her efforts to stop them, she was defeated. Just as the Death Lord was about to seize Tyrion's body, the light intervened, burning the surrounding Death Knights. To ensure the Ebonblade's survival, Darien opened the Death Gate for the others to escape, but it was too late for himself, and he perished from his wounds. Though the Silver Hand emerged victorious, Darien Mograine was later revived by the Death Lord, Lord Akaros, as the fourth and final horseman. With the 4 horsemen now complete and Darien as their leader, the Knights of the Ebonblade were ready for the war against the Majora. This battle had significant consequences, severely damaging the relationship between the Ebonblade and both the Silver Hand and the Argent Crusade. Years later, as the Scourge re-emerged, Argent Crusade sentries reminded the Death Knights of their past actions at Light's Hope Chapel. While they were not outright enemies, they were no longer considered allies. After the Fourth War, Matthias Shaw reported that the Argent Crusade still remained active in the Plaguelands. At Hearthglen, Mardenhold Keep served as a training ground for new recruits and a repository for artefacts recovered by the Crusade. Anderhall continued to be blighted, and reports indicated that Scholomance was still functioning as a necromancy school under investigation due to the presence of the Barovs and Dark Master Gandling's numerous minions. This vigilant state proved useful when Sylvanas Windrunner destroyed the Helm of Domination, unleashing the uncontrolled Scourge across Azeroth once again. During one patrol, the Argent Crusade spotted Nathanos Blightcaller sitting openly on his porch in the Eastern Plaguelands. They alerted the Alliance and the Horde, then joined the champions of Azeroth in battling Blightcaller, witnessing his death at the hands of Tyrande Whisperwind. These events would later be recorded in history as the period known as Death Rising.
Your power has grown. To run. High Priestess, Night Warrior, completely powerless to stop the coming.
With these events, a chapter in the history book finally closes on the Plaguelands. As the last echoes of battle fade and the dust of ages settles, the story of the Plaguelands reaches a poignant conclusion. These lands, once a testament to the relentless onslaught of darkness, have witnessed the rise and fall of heroes, the clash of ideologies, and the undying spirit of those who fought for hope and redemption. From the Scourge of Undeath to the valiant stand of the Argent Crusade, every inch of this scarred earth has been soaked with sacrifice and the resolve to reclaim what was lost. Now, with the final chapter written, we honour the memory of all who bled, fought, and persevered. The Plaguelands, once a realm of beauty, then despair, stand as a symbol of resilience and the enduring light of Azeroth. Though the battles here have ended, their legacy will forever inspire future generations to stand against the shadows. Thank you for joining us through this journey through the history of the Plaguelands. As we close this book, we carry forward the lessons of bravery, unity, and hope. Until our next story, may the light guide your path. Welcome back to the library, everyone. Today, our tale takes us into the depths of Azeroth's history as we uncover the lore of Duskwood. Duskwood, once known as Brightwood, resides within the Kingdom of Stormwind, nestled in the southern central reaches of the Eastern Kingdoms, positioned to the south of Elwyn Forest, east of Westfall, west of Deadwind Pass, and north of Stranglethorn Vale. It now exists under an everlasting darkness, a transformation brought about by the malevolent magic unleashed by Medivh's demise. This once scenic part of Elwyn Forest now stands shrouded in gnarled trees, with a thick black fog covering the woods, invoking an aura of intrigue, a land of mystery we aim to unravel in this very narrative. The story of Duskwood commences a remarkable 10,000 years in the past. in an era after the fragmentation of the supercontinent known as Calibur into the recognizable lands of today in the aftermath of the Great Sundering, a time when the Night Elves reigned supreme over the lands. Their ascendancy stemmed directly from the bestowed power of the original World Tree, Nordrassil, situated atop of Mount Hyjal at the new Well of Eternity's location. The great dragon, Alexstrasza, imbued the tree with vigor and vitality, gifts that augmented the Night Elves' strengths. Additionally, Ysera's blessing bound the tree and the elven druids to the Emerald Dream, granting them unhindered access to her realm, previously accessible only through arduous meditation. However, the most crucial of the blessings came from Nosdormu, ensuring the Night Elves' immortality as long as the tree endured. Embracing this power, the Night Elves delved deeper into Druidism, establishing one of Azeroth's most expansive and formidable empires. Some druids, driven by their relentless pursuit of knowledge, ventured into forbidden territory by assuming a druid form deemed taboo to combat the satyrs during the War of the Satyr. For a deeper insight into the events surrounding this conflict, explore our dedicated tale, accessible through a secure portal provided in the description below. The aftermath of this war led to the establishment of the Cenarian Circle, a cohesive organization tasked with guiding and overseeing the practices of the world's druids. Among the founding members of the Cenarian Circle stood Fandral Staghelm, a venerable night elf renowned for his knowledge and wisdom. For millennia, Staghelm dutifully contributed his expertise to the circle until a perilous revelation came to light. A peculiar metal known as saronite began to emerge in various regions across the world of Azeroth. This mysterious substance is intricately linked with the old god, Yogg-Saron. Despite the old god being confined within Ulduar, his ominous influence persisted. His black blood seeped into the world and crystallized into this saronite. This malevolent metal possesses the capability to corrupt all it comes into contact with. The appearance of saronite on Azeroth was first documented approximately 4,500 years ago, manifesting in areas such as Ashenvale, Crystalsong Forest, Feralus, the Hinterlands, and notably Duskwood, referred to as Brightwood during that era. When Staghelm caught wind of these widespread saronite deposits plaguing the lands, it is rumoured that he bypassed consulting the Cenarian Circle and instead took matters into his own hands. In a bid to halt the spread of saronite across the world, Staghelm and his closest followers secretly obtained 6 enchanted branches from the World Tree Nordrassil. They then strategically planted these branches in Ashenvale, Crystalsong Forest, Feralus, the Hinterlands, and in an area of Duskwood known to us today as the Twilight Grove. And from these branches grew the Great Trees. These Great Trees effectively purged the saronite deposits from their respective regions. Encouraged by their success, the Druids planted the final and most significant bough in Northrend, where it rapidly grew into the world tree known as Andrassil. Over time, these great trees flourished in their designated locations. Despite their pivotal role in eradicating the saronite, the significance of these great trees gradually waned in the ensuing millennia. They left many adventurers puzzled about their origins upon first encountering them. Each great tree is accompanied by a portal, and it is said that the druids could utilize these portals beneath the great trees to traverse the Emerald Dream. Unbeknownst to the Circle, Yogg-Saron had exploited the trees planted by Staghelm, using them as a conduit to access the Emerald Dream. Through these trees, the old gods disseminated small seeds of corruption into the Dreamways, eventually polluting the dream and giving rise to what would later be known as the Emerald Nightmare. Additionally, the Dragons of the Nightmare emerged from these portals, guarding the portals with utmost dedication, deterring even the most seasoned of fighters. Advancing through time, the next notable milestone in our exploration of Duskwood's tale is the arrival of the humans. In ancient times, human tribes hailing from the kingdom of Arathor flourished in the northern regions of what we now call the Eastern Kingdoms. Arathor's influence persisted for over a millennium until it fractured into the Seven Kingdoms. Around 1,200 years before the events of the Dark Portal, noble families from Strom sought to depart the Arathi Highlands, seeking greener pastures in the northern territories of Lordaeron. Alongside this, led by Faldir, a descendant of Thoradin's lineage, some remaining Arathi descendants embarked on a southward expedition to establish Stormwind. Legends whispered in the northern realms spoke of the fading remnants of the Arathi disappearing into the southern wilderness of Azeroth following the dissolution of Arathor, crossing the rugged mountains of Khazmodan. Their challenging journey concluded as they settled in the southern expanse of the continent, vaguely also named Azeroth. Nestled in a verdant valley, they founded Stormwind, swiftly emerging as a self-sufficient force. Initially the smallest and most secluded human nation, Stormwind gradually prospered, cultivating numerous farmland in the fertile vicinity. As Stormwind's populace grew, quaint towns sprouted around the Elwyn Forest, Westfall, the Red Ridge Mountains, and of course the region that would come to be known to the humans of that era as Brightwood. Our narrative of Duskwood now takes a sinister turn as we delve into the involvement of Medivh. Despite the details of Medivh's life being far too vast to be fully recounted here, a brief account is still relevant. Medivh, the son of Aegwyn, the guardian of Tirisfal, was destined to follow in his mother's illustrious footsteps as the protector of the land. As the kingdom of Stormwind expanded, venturing into uncharted territories, it inevitably clashed with the indigenous inhabitants of the land. One such conflict arose with the Gurobashi trolls of the Stranglethorn Vale, a region located just south of Duskwood. For more details on this war, you can refer to our Tales of Elwyn Forest or Stranglethorn Vale. The war reached its climax with the decimation of large troll armies outside the gates of Stormwind, as Medivh unleashed his formidable power upon them. Following these events, Medivh became apprehensive about his powers, and later embarked on a journey to Karazhan to seek guidance from his mother on how to control them. Karazhan, a mage tower constructed in secrecy by the guardian Aegwyn approximately 600 years prior to the First War, served as his destination. It was during his time at Karazhan that Medivh encountered Morose, a companion of Aegwyn. Morose agreed to assist Medivh and oversee Karazhan, assuming the role of his castellan. Over time, Medivh fell increasingly under the influence of Sargeras, the corrupted titan and leader of the Burning Legion. Sargeras began to manipulate Medivh's thoughts and emotions towards a sinister end. As the darkness within Medivh grew, his isolation as the new guardian was thought to be the cause, and Morose suggested an alternative approach. If Medivh could not trust the Kirin Tor or the Council of Tirisfal, perhaps inviting people from the surrounding regions for a banquet would prove beneficial. Morose believed that their motives would be genuine, driven only by curiosity, and their company might lift his spirits. In the ensuing years, Medivh hosted numerous gatherings, and indeed his mood appeared to improve. As the tale unfolds, Medivh's journey led him to confront the Orcish warlock Gul'dan, ultimately resulting in the opening of the Dark Portal. At a subsequent banquet in Karazhan, following the portal's unveiling, Aegwyn made a startling revelation upon confronting her son. Medivh was possessed by Sargeras. Driven to madness by the malevolent demon, Medivh resorted to draining the life force of all nearby humans in a desperate struggle against his own mother. Among the victims were nobles from Grand Hamlet, a quiet, peaceful town located in Brightwood. These events marked a significant and devastating loss for this peaceful town. The horror didn't cease there. At some point during the First War, Grand Hamlet fell prey to relentless orc raiding parties, their numbers swelling as they prepared to besiege the town. Though the forces of Stormwind valiantly held them off for a time, the relentless advance of the old horde ultimately led to the town's demise. As you may know, the dark saga of Duskwood doesn't conclude with the tragic fate of the citizens of Grand Hamlet. In a tale reserved for another time, towards the end of the Second War, Medivh would later meet his end at the hands of the Stormwind forces led by Anduin Lothar, Khadgar, and Corona. In the aftermath of his demise, fell energy surged forth, gradually corrupting the surrounding areas of Karazhan. This corruption extended into the Deadwind Pass and then seeped into Brightwood, transforming the once vibrant land into a perilous, thorn-ridden blight, shrouded in thick fog and eternal darkness. Consequently, in the third year after the opening of the Dark Portal, the land acquired a fresh moniker, Duskwood. This malevolent enchantment not only altered the terrain of the vicinity, but also affected the inhabitants dwelling within. Once, Elwyn Forest harboured a community of spiders, coexisting peacefully within the forests. Yet, as the curse shrouded Duskwood, transforming the tranquil woodland into a realm of dread, these spiders underwent grotesque mutations, swelling to monstrous sizes. The lurking venomous arachnids commenced hunting their unsuspecting prey throughout the shadowed reaches of the land. However, in the face of such adversity, the humans of the realm proved their resilience. Despite the curse casting an eternal night over the land, they refused to abandon the region. Following the Alliance's triumph over the Horde at the conclusion of the Second War, the citizens of the once picturesque Brightwood dared to reclaim their ravaged dwellings in the newly christened and cursed territory of Duskwood. Darkshire emerged from the ashes of Grand Hamlet, its reconstruction aided by the guidance of Supreme Commander Turelion. Under his watchful eye, the kingdom's citizens were repatriated, breathing new life into the town with its solemn yet fitting new name. In a tale not recounted here, following King Varian Rin's disappearance, the Kingdom of Stormwind withdrew its troops from Duskwood due to the political machinations of Lady Kutrana Prestor. Left to fend for themselves, the Night Watch was formed to defend against the various threats that plagued the reborn town of Darkshire. Initially led by Commander Althea Ebenlock, the Night Watch consisted of locals who underwent training to protect their home. They faced mutated spiders, marauding wolves, and an abomination crafted by the necromancer Abercrombie the Embalmer. Abercrombie, a Ravenhill alchemist, had been driven mad by his wife Eliza's death. He resorted to dark magic, placing his own heart within her corpse to revive her. This act cursed Eliza with a craving for human flesh, compelling Abercrombie to keep her buried. In his madness, and through unwitting adventurers' assistance, Abercrombie created the abominable Stitches, with the sole purpose to terrorise Darkshire. However, these threats would be but fragments of larger peril. The gravest danger looming over Darkshire and all of Duskwood was the relentless menace of the undead. Morbant Fell, a human necromancer, rose to prominence in the shadowed recesses of the region. Driven by visions of conquest, he raised an army of the undead from the graves of Duskwood, and he also acquired deceased bodies from the grave robber known as Dextran Ward. Ward would later be executed for his heinous crimes after serving time in the Stormwind stockades. From his eerie abode atop the Forlorn Row in Ravenhill Cemetery, Morbant Fell wielded control over the undead hordes. Legend has it that Morbant Fell was linked to a sinister group known as the Dark Riders, a connection we'll delve into following this next tale of sorrow. As darkness continued its relentless advance across the land, some brave townsfolk ventured forth to uncover its source. Soon after setting out on their quest, the citizens of Darkshire vanished without a trace, their last known whereabouts being the foreboding Tower of Karazhan, this place believed to be the epicenter of the curse shrouding the land. A rescue mission was swiftly organised, entrusted to 3 battle-hardened individuals. Leading the charge was Duggan, a paladin loyal to the Kingdom of Stormwind and the Order of the Silver Hand. Having witnessed the horrors of the Second War, Duggan had made his home in Duskwood, with his wife Adina and their twin daughters, Lonia and Lyran. Joining him were his companions, Carden, a stout dwarf from the Wildhammer clan, and Voldana, a high elf hailing from the hinterlands. Together they braved the night, their mission clear, to rescue the missing townsfolk of Darkshire. Following the trail of clues, the trio found themselves at the foot of Karazhan's cursed tower. Inside, they were met with chilling sights, tormented spirits haunting the corridors, echoes of lives lost within the tower's walls. Amidst the shadows they encountered Terestian Ilhoof, a corrupted satyr, and in the ensuing battle, Duggan met his untimely demise. Though fate claimed their leader, Carden and Voldana managed to escape the tower's grip, fleeing the horrors within. Carden and Voldana conveyed the heartbreaking news to Duggan's wife, Adina. Consumed by grief, Adina's mind faltered, rendering her incapable of caring for her twin daughters. In a noble gesture to honour their fallen comrade, Voldana and Carden decided to raise the girls as their own. Lonia found her home in Queldanel Lodge, nestled in the hinterlands under Voldana's care, while Carden raised Lyran in Airy Peak. Years passed, and Lyran grew restless, yearning for knowledge about her parents despite Carden's reluctance to reveal the truth. One day, Carden made a journey to visit Voldana in Queldanil, unaware that Lyran had secretly followed him. It was then that Lyran discovered her long-lost twin sister, Lonia. Their reunion prompted Carden to share the family's tragic history, a tale of a valiant paladin named Duggan, their mother Adina, and the dark events that unfolded within Duskwood. Determined to uncover the truth about their mother, the twins embarked on a journey to Darkshire, where they found their old home, now shrouded in darkness. Attacked by ghouls upon arrival, they were rescued by Watcher Dodds and his Night Watch soldiers. The Watch's leader, Commander Althea Ebenlock, brought grim news. Their mother tragically ended her own life, and her corpse had been reanimated into an undead and was amongst those that threatened Darkshire. In a grim task, the twins set out to release their mother's soul from its prison of undead flesh. With determination and sorrow, after they had severed her decayed flesh, they laid their mother's soul to rest in a fresh grave in the hinterlands. It was at this solemn moment that the girls pledged to journey to Karazhan and liberate their father's spirit, ending his perpetual suffering for good. Years passed, and the twins, now young women, honed their skills. Lyran emerged as a skilled warrior, while Lonia, adept in magic, sought to contact their father's spirit. Duggan's warnings went unheeded by Lyran, who remained resolute in her quest to free him. In secret, they journeyed to Karazhan, where they encountered visions of the past and their father's tormentor, Terestian Ilhoof. In a fierce battle against their father's killer, the twins emerged victorious, but not unscathed. Duggan's spirit had intervened to save them from treacherous enchantment. Despite their efforts, Duggan's spirit remained bound to Karazhan. As danger loomed, the twins made their escape. Though they couldn't free their father's spirit, they found solace in knowing his resilience mirrored their own, a testament to their unbroken spirit in the face of the darkness. Transitioning from one sorrowful tale to another, Duskwood bears the burden of Death's stories, embodied by the intimidating figure of Morladim. Clad in armor, this skeletal warrior roamed the Ravenhill Cemetery.
Alright, I'm gonna call it a stream here. Yeah, it's just gonna be this listening to shit for like the next hour or so.